No room for you, my brother said on Thanksgiving. What happened next broke them. Before I tell you my whole story, let me know in the comments what part of the world you're listening to me from. My name is Maria Elena Rodriguez. I'm 38 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew what family meant. I work as a registered nurse at Cedars-Sinai here in Los Angeles, pulling 12-hour shifts in the cardiac unit. And I run a small catering business on weekends called Elena's Kitchen. The irony of that name isn't lost on me now, considering what happened. For 15 years, I've been what my therapist now calls the family ATM with feelings. When Carlos needed money for law school, I took out a second mortgage. When my mother required surgery, I covered the $8,000 deductible. When Isabella's wedding nearly bankrupted her, I stepped in with $12,000 and spent 3 days cooking for 200 guests for free. But it wasn't just the money. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday, they all happened at my house. My modest 3-bedroom home in Eagle Rock became the family headquarters, and I became the unpaid event coordinator, chef, decorator, and cleanup crew. This year felt different from the start. I was staring at my phone, reading a text from Carlos that made my hands shake. Change of plans for Thursday. Don't worry about hosting this year. No explanation, no discussion, just dismissal after 15 years of tradition. I called him immediately, my heart racing. Carlos, what do you mean change of plans? I already bought the turkey. It's 22 pounds, and I've been preparing for weeks. His voice was cold, professional. Look, Maria, we decided to do something different this year. More sophisticated. You understand. More sophisticated. The words hit me like a slap. All those years of my homemade tortillas, my grandmother's mole recipe, apparently not sophisticated enough. Okay, well, where are we meeting then? I can still bring the desserts, or help with setup. The pause lasted too long. In that silence, I heard my future changing. Over the next few days, I learned in pieces what my family had decided without me. Carlos had rented a private dining room at some upscale restaurant in Beverly Hills. Isabella had designed custom invitations on cream-colored cardstock. Even my cousins from San Diego were driving up for this sophisticated celebration. Everyone was invited. Everyone except the person who'd made it all possible for the last decade and a half. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they wanted to surprise me. Maybe they thought I needed a break. The delusion lasted until Tuesday night, when I bumped into my cousin Sophia at the grocery store. She hugged me and said, "I'm so excited for Thursday. Carlos said the restaurant has a jazz quartet. Are you nervous about the speech?" The speech? They'd planned a family gathering elaborate enough to include speeches, and I didn't even know it was happening. That night, I sat at my dining room table and felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack, like ice about to split completely. Tomorrow would change everything. I woke up Thanksgiving morning to the sound of my own alarm, as I had every year since I moved to this house. But instead of the familiar chaos of prep work, my kitchen was eerily quiet. The 22-pound turkey sat in my refrigerator like a monument to my naivety. I'd bought enough food to feed 25 people, and the only person eating it would be me. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the restaurant. Mastro's Beverly Hills was exactly what you'd expect. All marble and dark wood. Through the massive windows, I could see my family in the private dining room, laughing and raising glasses of champagne. Carlos was at the head of the table, gesturing animatedly. Isabella was wearing a dress we'd gone shopping for together last month. My mother was beaming. They looked perfect, complete, happy, like a family that had never needed me at all. I stood there for 10 minutes, watching through glass like a ghost haunting my own life. a hostess finally approached me. "Are you here for the Rodriguez party?" "Yes," I said quietly. She led me to the private dining room. When we reached the doorway, the laughter stopped. Every face turned toward me, and I saw myself through their eyes. The uninvited guest. Carlos stood up slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to something that looked almost like annoyance. He walked over to me, and I thought, God, I actually thought he was going to hug me and apologize for the misunderstanding. Instead, he put his hand on my shoulder in a way that felt more like a restraint than affection, and said, just loud enough for the family to hear, but quiet enough to maintain his precious sophistication, "No room for you, Maria." The words hit me like ice water. Not, "We're full." Not, "It's complicated." Not even, "I'm sorry." Just, "No room for you." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. The years of paying for Carlos's education while I ate ramen for months. The nights I'd stayed up making centerpieces for Isabella's events. The time I'd given my mother my emergency fund for a vacation I wasn't invited on. The countless holidays where I'd cooked and cleaned while they talked and laughed and planned futures that didn't include me. I looked around that room, at the faces of people I'd sacrificed everything for, and I saw the truth I'd been avoiding for 15 years. I wasn't family to them. I was a service, a convenience, a resource to be used when needed and dismissed when no longer convenient. But here's what Carlos didn't expect. Here's what none of them expected. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't make a scene. I smiled. "You know what, Carlos? You're absolutely right. There isn't room for me here." I looked around the table one more time, memorizing their faces. "But there's definitely no room for any of you in my life anymore." I turned and walked out, my head high, my step steady. Behind me, I heard the silence stretch until someone, probably my mother, started to speak. But I was already gone. The drive home was the longest and shortest 20 minutes of my life. My hands were steady on the wheel. My mind was clear. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe fully. When I got home, I sat at my dining room table and opened my laptop. It was time to take inventory. The money first. In 15 years, I'd given or loaned my family over $87,000. Car payments for Carlos during law school, $12,000. Isabella's wedding, $12,000. My mother's surgery, vacation funds, emergency loans, down payment help for Isabella's house. It all added up to more than I'd ever let myself calculate before. Out of all that money, I'd been paid back exactly $400, but the money was just the beginning. I opened my email and started scrolling through years of correspondence. Carlos using my name and credentials to get catering contracts with my hospital colleagues. Isabella listing me as a reference for everything from apartment applications to job interviews. Trading on my reputation without ever asking permission. My mother telling her friends I was always available to cook for their events. Volunteering my services without consulting me. They'd built their lives on the foundation of my generosity, and they'd never once asked if I was okay carrying that weight. I spent the rest of Thanksgiving afternoon doing something I'd never done before, putting myself first. I drafted emails. I made phone calls. I started the process of reclaiming my life. First, I called my bank and removed Carlos as an authorized user on my credit cards. Cards he'd used just last month to take a client to dinner, billing it as a business expense he never reimbursed. Then I sent carefully worded messages to the 3 catering clients Carlos had referred to me, explaining that I was restructuring my business and would no longer be offering the family discount rate I'd been charging them. My actual rate was 3 times what I'd been accepting. Finally, I drafted a letter to my family. Not angry, not hurt, just honest. I explained that I would no longer be providing financial assistance. hosting family events, or offering my professional services for free. I wasn't cutting them off out of spite. I was establishing boundaries that should have existed all along. I didn't send the letter that night. Instead, I reheated some leftover Chinese food, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at my table planning my real Thanksgiving. It would be the first one in 15 years that was actually about gratitude. The responses started coming in by Friday morning. Carlos called first, his voice tight with panic. "Maria, what the hell is this about removing me from your credit cards? I have a client dinner tonight, and my card was declined." "Use your own card, Carlos," I said simply. "My own card. Maria, you know I'm between bonuses right now. Look, if this is about yesterday, I'm sorry. Okay, the restaurant had limited space, and we thought..." "You thought wrong." I hung up. Isabella texted next. "Mom told me about your dramatic email. This is so childish. Maria, we're family." I didn't respond. My mother called that afternoon, using the voice she'd perfected over 38 years of motherhood, the one that could make me feel guilty for breathing too loudly. "Mia, what's this about boundaries? Family doesn't have boundaries. Family helps family." "You're right, Mom," I said. "Family does help family. But for 15 years, the help has only gone one direction. That's not true. And you know it. We love you, Maria. Love isn't the same as respect, Mom. And respect definitely isn't the same as room at the table." Over the next few weeks, the real consequences began to unfold like dominoes falling in slow motion. Carlos's client dinner did get ruined. Apparently, he'd been relying on my credit card for months to float his business expenses between paychecks. When word spread through his firm that he was having cash flow issues, 2 major clients started questioning his financial stability. Isabella's perfect social media life took a hit when she had to cancel the elaborate Christmas party she'd planned, using my catering services at cost. When her husband asked why the budget had suddenly tripled, she had to admit she'd been underpaying her sister for years. My mother found herself without a New Year's Eve plan for the first time in a decade. Apparently, none of her friends were interested in hosting the elaborate potluck she'd volunteered my services for. But the most satisfying consequence was the one I never saw coming. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Elena's kitchen?" The voice was crisp, professional, definitely not family. "This is Maria," I said carefully. "Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Patricia Hoffman. I'm an event coordinator for several high-end venues in Beverly Hills. I got your name from a friend who was at Mastro's a few weeks ago. She overheard quite a commotion in one of the private dining rooms. Apparently, someone was very upset about losing their family caterer." I almost laughed. "That, I might know something about that. Well, word has gotten around that you're accepting new clients. And I have to tell you, the food at your previous events has quite a reputation. Would you be interested in catering a New Year's Eve gala for 200 guests? Budget is $30,000. $30,000 for one event. More than I'd made from my family in 15 years of cooking. "I'd be very interested," I said. By Christmas, Elena's kitchen had bookings through June. Word of mouth in Beverly Hills travels fast, especially when your former clients are desperately trying to replace you. Every event I catered led to 3 more referrals. I raised my rates twice and was still booked solid. I hired 2 assistants, bought professional equipment, and moved my business into a proper commercial space. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that was mine alone. But the real transformation wasn't financial. It was personal. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped saying yes to things that drained me. I stopped believing that my worth was measured by how much I could give away. On New Year's Eve, as I watched 200 of Beverly Hills' most influential people enjoy food, I'd created in a space I'd designed with money I'd earned, through my own boundaries. My phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. "The family isn't the same without you. Can we talk?" I looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations aren't worth having. 3 months later, I moved to a gorgeous condo in Manhattan Beach. All clean lines and ocean views, with a kitchen designed for a chef who values herself. The dining room table came with me, though. Not because I couldn't let go of the past, but because I'd earned the right to fill it with people who actually wanted me there. My first dinner party in the new place was small. Just 3 friends from work, a neighbor, and my therapist's daughter visiting from college. We talked about books and travel and dreams for the future. No one asked me to pay for anything or treated me like the help. When dessert was served, a tres leches cake I'd made because I wanted to, not because someone expected it. One of my guests raised her glass and said, "To Maria, for opening her home and her heart to us. Room at the table, room in the conversation, room to be myself." That's what family should feel like. 6 months after that Thanksgiving that changed everything, I ran into Isabella at the farmer's market in Santa Monica. She looked tired, stressed, like someone carrying weight she wasn't used to bearing. "Maria," she said, her voice uncertain, "you look different. Good different." I was different. I was wearing a dress I'd bought with money I'd earned and kept. My hair was cut in a style that made me feel confident instead of convenient. I was carrying flowers for my own table instead of supplies for someone else's event. "How are you, Isabella?" She fidgeted with her purse strap. "Things have been challenging. Carlos is struggling at work. Mom's been asking about you. We all have, I'm sure. Look, I know we handled things badly. That day at the restaurant, Carlos feels terrible about what he said." "Does he?" "Yes, and we want to make it right. We're planning a family reunion for Easter, and we really want you there. We'll pay for everything this time, I promise." The old Maria, the Maria who measured her worth by her usefulness, might have felt touched by this invitation, might have seen it as an apology, a chance to rebuild. But I wasn't that Maria anymore. "Isabella, do you know what my favorite part of running Elena's kitchen has been?" She shook her head. "Every single client asks me what I want, what I think would work best, what my professional recommendation is. They value my expertise, my time, my input. They see me as essential to their event, not just convenient." Isabella's face crumpled slightly. "We see you as essential, Maria. We're lost without you." "No, you're not lost without me. You're just inconvenienced without me. And that's not the same thing." I touched her arm gently, because despite everything, I didn't hate her. I just couldn't afford to love her the way I used to. "I hope you figure out how to be a family without needing someone to sacrifice themselves for you. I really do. But I'm not available for that role anymore." Walking away from her was easier than I'd expected. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared about myself more. That evening, I cooked dinner for one in my beautiful kitchen, with the sunset painting the ocean gold outside my windows. I set my table with the good china, lit candles, and poured good wine. I made it an occasion because I was worth celebrating. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, my event coordinator. "Maria, I have a potential client who wants to book Elena's kitchen for a Thanksgiving event next year. Corporate retreat for 50 people. Would you be interested?" I smiled as I typed back, "Absolutely. But I should mention, I only work with clients who understand that everyone deserves a seat at the table." "Perfect," she replied. "That's exactly why they want to hire you. Now, if you're listening to this story, and something about it feels familiar, if you've been the one giving and giving until there's nothing left of yourself, if you've been measuring your worth by how much you can sacrifice, if you've been accepting crumbs and calling it a feast, I want you to know something. You deserve a seat at your own table. You deserve to be valued, not just used. You deserve relationships where love flows in both directions. It's never too late to set boundaries. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to discover that the people who truly love you will respect your limits, not resent them. Your worth isn't determined by how much you can give away. Your value isn't measured by your convenience to others. You are not selfish for wanting to be treated with the same consideration you show everyone else. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video if you're ready to start putting yourself first. Subscribe if you want to hear more story about people who found the courage to choose themselves. And remember, there's always room at the table for someone who knows their own worth. The only question is, are you ready to claim your seat?